In this video, we're going to be checking out 6 different DIY trellises from the MakerPipe community, and these all share one main thing in common, and it's the fact that they're all built with off-the-shelf electrical conduit. That's the steel tubing that you can see down here in this first trellis that we're going to look at. And also, with the EMT conduit, you'll see these fittings that are used to join pieces of EMT conduit together, and those are manufactured by us in upstate South Carolina, and we send those all over the country, and people like Scott here build all kinds of awesome projects, and trellises are among the most popular that we see because of your ability to customize them and get exactly what you need for your garden. And that's exactly what Scott did here for this first one. This is a mobile trellis that he put together, and I love this one a lot. This one was shared recently by Scott, and essentially it's just a metal frame that he built here at the bottom using various connectors like the MakerPipe T connector down there, and we can see the MakerPipe 90-degree connector being used in the corners to make that 3-way connection. And then we can see another connector here. This is called the 4-way connector. So those 3 different connectors, the T, the 90, and the 4-way, those are all being used to make this steel framework down here at the bottom. And essentially, he just made this steel framework so he could attach these cattle panels to the framework and just arch them over and kind of hand bend them. And then those are just secured to the frame, it looked like, with zip ties. And there's a miniature model of the build that he did. And essentially, it's just that, that steel frame kind of, or the cattle panel being captured in the steel frame using those zip ties. And now he's got a trellis that he can move around really easily. And he wanted something he could take apart really easily during the season and then be able to move it around. So he's going to be able to do exactly that with this. And just a great idea and just a great example of how you can use EMT conduit and MakerPipe connectors to get something fully custom for your garden. So that's really cool, Scott. Thanks so much for sharing it. Another custom solution that was shared by Matthew is this really cool one that I love. Essentially, this is just a vertical trellis that also utilizes cattle panels and an EMT conduit and MakerPipe frame to support those cattle panels. And I love this one because there's a really unique hack in this where he used the MakerPipe flange, and usually it's just this half here on the left side to attach to flat surfaces, but you can see here that he needed to attach the flange and the whole frame to these vertical beams here that are very narrow. And so there wouldn't be enough really for the whole base to grab onto. So he added another MakerPipe flange piece and bolted that to the complete flange there and kind of created this L-shaped bracket that he could attach these vertical beams. And that's just really clever to me and a really smart utilization of materials to kind of accommodate this odd beam that he's attaching to. But essentially, he used that flange hack to attach these verticals to the vertical beams there on his screened-in patio, and then he used a handheld pipe and tube bender to arch this conduit and create these 4 arches that are attached to the vertical beams of the screened-in porch. And then it looks like just the cattle panels are attached to that, to those vertical beams there, and he just did that using some metal wire, as we can see, and it looks like a screw, probably like a self-drilling screw just added to that EMT conduit, and just holding that wire, giving that wire something to grab onto and hold that cattle panel in place. The whole frame is painted white to match the beams of the screened-in porch, which looks awesome. And he just utilized those MakerPipe flanges and also the MakerPipe T connector to add that support that goes from the vertical arch to the back wall there, to the back beam there, to support everything, keep it in place. Really awesome idea, Matthew. Thanks so much for sharing this. A really great idea. Next up is a tomato trellis, and this comes from SFD. And this is probably the more common design that we see, except this one is made to be adjusted, which is really awesome because, your plants grow. You want to change the support and kind of update it, and you want it to be modular, which is why EMT conduit and connectors are so great for different garden projects like this. But essentially, it's just 4 verticals. We don't see exactly how those are mounted to the base of the frame, but you can use 2-hole straps or 1-hole straps. Those are really inexpensive and really great methods for securing verticals or even horizontal pieces of conduit to your build. And essentially, those 4 verticals just go up. And then at the very top, we can see, not at the very top, a quarter of the way down or so, he's got MakerPipe T connectors, adding these cross supports that go all the way to the other side. And essentially, we can see here that there's still some plenty of vertical that he can move and adjust these T connectors. So if the plants get really high, he can move these T connectors up and change the level and the height of the support beam that's going across. And then we can see that he added another T connector brace that kind of runs from one pipe or one vertical to the other. And then above that is where he's got those horizontal beams attached with the T connectors. And again, he can kind of adjust those as needed. And then really simply, he just added some twine, it looks like, wrapped around the pieces of conduit, and those are going down to the plants and giving them the support they need. So that's really cool. SFD, nice and simple project. Just a handful of T connectors, which are the most cost-effective connector that we offer, and they are probably the most versatile because you can use them for a lot of different projects, and this is a great example of that. So thanks so much for sharing this. Really appreciate it. Next up is an idea from Gary that I love. This was shared a while back. This is what we're calling the chain trellis, and essentially it's a freestanding trellis just over a garden bed that's in the ground, and it's not a wooden bed or anything like that, and it's just got conduit verticals that are secured in the ground, I would imagine probably with rebar. We love mentioning and recommending that hack where essentially you just get some rebar pins from off the shelf, hammer those in the ground, and then you can slide your 3/4 inch EMT conduit over top of them. I'll link that stake down below if you want to check it out. But essentially we got 4 verticals here, and then he's just using the MakerPipe 90-degree connector kind of flipped over and oriented on its side. So there's horizontal pieces of conduit running from one side of the frame to the other, and we can see those 90-degree connectors way down there, and that's just where the horizontal is. So it's really simple, just those 4 verticals and those 2 horizontals going from side to side. And then essentially he just got some chain from Lowe's, Home Depot. You can get that really inexpensively and just wrap that around the different pieces of conduit. So just going back and forth on the horizontal pieces of conduit, and then essentially that allowed him to use the really common tomahawks that you can get on Amazon and a ton of different places to just hook onto those chains and then hang the hooks on there to give these tomato plants some support that they need. So really cool. Here we can see kind of a wide angle of this where he's got the chain running back and forth, and then he's got those hooks hanging off of it, and just a really simple framework and just a really awesome way to give some plant support or support to the plants in the garden. So this is really cool, Gary. Thanks so much for sharing this idea. Next up is another really simple trellis. This comes from Dell. This is really cool. It's just essentially 2 vertical pieces of conduit in the back of the raised garden bed, and those just kind of extend up as we can see. And then we're using the MakerPipe T connector here at the very top of those to kind of create that 90-degree elbow to add that horizontal piece of conduit, which allows you to grab on with twine or string, different things. We can see they're tied around that going down to give the plant supports. And then we can see here, just to add the whole framework some support and bracing, they just added a MakerPipe adjustable angle connector, and that just extends down to the ground and just adds that angled support there going down to the ground. And instead of just having a single wall, a panel that could potentially tip over, now there's an angled brace that can kind of give this some support and also support the framework that is supporting the plants. Because once right now we can see it's just a little bit, the plants haven't been growing that long, but once the tomato plants or whatever they are get really big and there's a lot of tomatoes growing on there, get really heavy, you want this frame to have as much support as possible, and that's why connectors and bracing and everything like that are really important to the integrity of structures like this. So it's really awesome and just a really simple framework, and good to just have those simple braces to be able to support the plants, which is really great. So thanks so much for sharing this, Dell. Love seeing it. Last but not least is this really fantastic trellis from Sandy, and you might not be creating this exact same trellis, but a lot of good ideas in here for creating different supports if you want to recreate this whole thing, or if you want to kind of utilize it in different ways for your garden and whatever you're trying to grow. But essentially, it's basically just there's 4 towers, I call them, on the edge, and those are just with 90-degree connectors to create that rectangle that goes down to the ground. And there's some T connectors adding some bracing between the verticals there, as we can see. And you've got 4 of those towers on the sides, and then essentially Sandy used T connectors to grab onto those and kind of ramp up to this center tower here. With that's also made with 90-degree connectors in the corners there, and then there's some more 90s down here to add a support rung, and essentially just creating this really unique tower with, it looks like just some it looks like that's pretty loose. It's not cattle panel. I think it's just some normal netting that you can get off the shelf if you want to get some chicken wire, or if you want to actually get trellis netting, you can do that too. We can see here there's some lights hanging off of it, and looks just like a really fantastic solution, and is just really awesome. One of those projects that just looks wild, but it's really cool to see someone get something fully custom and exactly what they're after using conduit and connectors. And then she shared an update a little bit later, and here we can see with the loofah plants growing on top, and looks like the trellis is holding up great, which is awesome, of course, and it just looks like a really great space to be able to walk around. and to pick the different things off of it, and also get some shade under there if you want to spend some time in the garden just hanging out, which is really awesome, and just again really cool to see something custom that matches her needs and is kind of what she was after. So that's really cool, Sandy. Thanks so much for sharing this, and thanks to everybody for posting your builds. As always, we love seeing them. I'll link all these down below if you want to check them out in more detail. And of course, if you've got a build to share, feel free to send that to us through email, post it in the community. We'd love to see it and share it with the rest of the community. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one.